Hello everybody, this is Refresh, and I'm here to take a look at the Prismari Performance Commander Deck for Magic the Gathering. This is from Strixhaven School of Mages. On the back you'll see that it says Encore, Encore, choose your commander and overcome both friend and foe in this definitive multiplayer Magic format. Team up with Zephyr for the performance of a lifetime. As you cast bigger and bigger spells, Zephyr will reward you with bigger and bigger payoffs. Prismari College. Prismari mages see no difference between magic and art. Their spells are spectacles of raw creativity, masterpieces of showy, over-the-top magecraft. Any elemental force can be a Prismari muse and a medium. Includes a deck box, 100-card deck with 17 new cards, 10 double-sided token cards, life wheel, strategy insert, and reference card. Let's take a look at what's inside. Oh, it's a deck box. It looks nice. Here's the life wheel. Looks pretty cool. We have a water damaged strategy insert, but it gives you some nice history and background about your character, as well as some of the other characters that come in here. And then on the back is a how to play commander, which I think would probably be important as well. Now let's take a look at the deck. I'll have a tip card with a reminder for the phases of Magic, and on the back, a guide to popular Magic formats. Now that I've taken a look at this deck, I will sleeve it up, play it against its peers, and I'll be back to let you know what I think. Alright, so the instants and sorceries theme of this deck is very true. As you can tell from the face commanders, this deck really wants you to cast spells that are instants and sorceries. To this end, the deck is packed full of them, as you can see, especially on the more expensive end. This is because Zephyr cares about you casting expensive instants and sorceries, whereas the secondary commander, Veyron, just cares that you cast uninstant and sorcery. And because of that, there are a lot of really expensive instants and sorceries. So as you look over to the right over here, there are 5 7 mana instant sorceries, 2 8 mana instant sorceries, a 9 mana and a 10 mana, as well as 2 X spells. And so the deck wants you to cast expensive instants and sorceries and get some serious value and combo potential from all of those really expensive spells. Now note that some of these spells can be reduced in cost by various means. So Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time can be delved. Blasphemous Act costs less when you have more creatures on the battlefield. But some spells, like Apex of Power, they're just really expensive, and you're going to have to find a way to cast them. And when you do, there is a big effect. But the problem with this deck, and it's the main problem with this deck, is that the deck is loaded with expensive spells, and while there is a decent amount of ramp between the Soul Ring, the Arcane Signet, the Izzet Signet, Talisman of Creativity, and the Mind Stone, as well as a Letter of Acceptance and Elemental's Palette, and Hedron Archive, the deck doesn't have a lot to do on the early turns except for play the ramp. And so there is a chance that a faster deck will just run this deck over before it can do anything. As you can see, there's not even much in the way of roadblocks that the Prismari deck can present while it's trying to get its game going. And so there's a fragility to the deck in that if it doesn't go off and get all of its effects, then it can be pretty quickly run over, especially by more aggressive decks. Now there are some weaker cards in the mix here that don't really interact with the theme and don't serve a utility purpose. So the most egregious examples are the Hummel Defector, which is kind of a bad card draw spell. And the made for this deck, Sly Instigator, which just goads your opponent's creatures. And it feels like those are kind of out of place when most everything else cares about instants and sorceries being cast. So it's a little bit weird that those kinds of cards make their way into this deck, whereas most of the instants or sorceries either have a utility power or can combo with other cards to create a very powerful chain. And if you watch the Commander gameplay video, you'll see that Prismari had quite a run at the end of cards that were duplicating and copying and then powering each other and having a massive storm effect that was quite the spectacle to behold. And so one thing that this deck really does well is that humongous combo-tastic chain of spells. If you can get Zephi working with card draw and some of these very big and splashy spells, and maybe that you can find some way to make yourself seem like a minimal threat until then, but once people recognize that this deck is trying to do that, they may take advantage of the deck's lack of low and early game defenses and just run this deck into the ground before it can cast these really expensive and powerful spells. Zephi is definitely the better of the two commanders because there are just less permanents that are affected by Veyran's ability, but Veyran is still a reasonable commander at times, and if you like playing expensive board affecting spells that can often chain into a series of additional spells, then this deck isn't a bad one to take a look at, but you really do need to recognize that the deck is a little bit weak and soft in the early game, and you're gonna have to find ways to stall things out, especially since there's not a lot of removal in the deck that is cheap either. And so that is my thoughts for the Prismari Commander deck. If you've had experience with this deck, share your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of my videos, you can hit subscribe. This is Refresh. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.